Well, it's 7 o'clock. Glad you're here. Hope you had a good day. It's a good sunny day. Things are warming up, going to rain. Predicting tornadoes next week. So that's the way it goes. We'll begin the opening prayer. And Bo, would you lead some prayer, please? Tonight we're going to talk about something I'm sure that all of us celebrated just a few days ago, and that is Hanukkah. Everybody celebrate Hanukkah? Well, it was celebrated between December the 18th and the 26th, 8 days there it was celebrated. It is, a picture there, it's really 8 candles. One in the middle is the candle that you use to light the others with on the proper day. And the middle candle is called a samash, and it's lit and lights. You light 1 candle the first day, first night. Second day, you'll light 2, and the third, so on, to get all 8 of them lit. You got to light them generally before sundown, or right at sundown, and you let them burn for 30 minutes after sundown. And then you blow them out. So you got to, if you want to start them at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that'll be fine. But you got to make sure you got enough candle there, enough oil, according to what kind of lighting you're using, to last until 30 minutes after sundown. And then you extinguish the flame, and you would then, during each of these 8 nights, there'd be a lot of food that would be eaten. You have prayers, you sing songs, you play games, exchange gifts. That's a pretty good holiday, you might call it, for the Jewish individuals. It's called 2 other names. One is the Festival of Lights. It's called that one. You'll find Josephus calls it that one in his writings about this. And it's also called the Feast of Dedication. The Feast of Dedication. And there's a reason for that, and we'll get to that in a little bit, the Feast of Dedication. Now, the amazing thing about this is how it got started. You might think, well, somebody just came up, let's have a holiday here that sort of goes along with Christmas, and we'll do about what they do, and we'll just remember Jewish things. It's not that simple. It's a very fascinating story how it got started. But it starts, believe it or not, in the book of Daniel. If you recall, in Daniel chapter 2 is when King Nebuchadnezzar has that dream, and it bothers him. And he calls in his magicians and such, and he tells them, come in and tell me what this dream is and tell me what it means. And they said, well, we don't know what it is. You got to tell us. And Nebuchadnezzar got sort of hot at him and said, no, if you're who you say you are, you tell me what it is and what it means. And they couldn't. And he threatened to kill them all. You remember, Daniel then comes on the scene, and he said, if you'll let me go to God and talk to him, I'll tell you what your dream is and what it means. Well, Daniel does. God reveals him the dream, tells him what it means. And sure enough, Daniel goes to Nebuchadnezzar, and he sees the statue there that represented the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had. And Daniel says, now this is what the dream you had, the head of gold, a chest of silver and bronze, and the legs of I forgot what the legs are. Anyway, the legs of clay. And he explains to him, to Nebuchadnezzar, that you're the Babylon. You're the one on top. You're the big king, great king. But after you, your kingdom is going to fall to the Persians, or the Medo-Persians they're called. And then eventually the Persian kingdom is going to fall, and you're going to have the Greece, or the Greeks going to come in. And then the Romans are going to come in. They're going to defeat the Greeks. And he says, now that's when this kingdom not built with hands. The church he's talking about is going to be built, established, and it will stand forever. Nothing is going to stop it. Well, we remember it. We know that. We've heard that, I'm sure, many times explained to us. But what Daniel goes on to do, in chapter 8, he talks about something else that's going to happen. And we don't often hear about this. We don't really talk a lot about the other verses or chapters of Daniel that much. But Daniel had a dream. And he saw a goat with 2 horns. Then he saw another goat with 1 horn. And the goat with 1 horn destroys the goat with 2 horns. And then eventually something comes along and destroys that goat that has the 1 horn. That's the dream he has. Well, the angel comes and explains it to him. In Daniel 8 and verse 20. The ram which you saw having 2 horns, they are the kings of Media and Persia. Remember that second of that statue, the silver one? That's what he's talking about. That first goat is the Mede Persian. And the male goat is the kingdom of Greece. That's Greek, the next one underneath. The large horn that is between its eyes is the first king. And as for the broken horn and the 4 that stood in its place, 4 kingdoms shall arise out of that nation, but not with its power. So you got the Greek kingdom. Who was the big man of the Greeks? Alexander the Great. He's the one he's speaking of right here. The large horn. That's Alexander the Great he's speaking about. And it's said that Alexander, when he was explaining this, he looked at it and he said, he's talking about me. Well, he was. But if you recall, Alexander, he died at a young age, I think 33. He died. And after he died, the Greek kingdom divided into 4 kingdoms. And they each had four kings. And that's what he's saying in verse 22. The large horn, verse 21, the large horn between its eyes is the first king. Whereas the broken horn, that's Alexander dying. And the 4 that stood in its place, the 4 kingdoms, that's the 4 kingdoms that came out of the death of Alexander. So the Greek kingdom is divided in 4 parts. Chapter 8, verse 23 and 24. And in the latter times of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached their fullness, a king shall arise, having fierce features, who understands sinister schemes. His power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. He shall destroy fearfully, and shall prosper and thrive. He shall destroy the mighty, and also the holy people. So of these 4 kingdoms, 1 king is going to rise to the top. And he's going to be pretty bad. Bad as in fierce features. He's a very sinister schemes he has. He's going to destroy a lot of folks not by his power, but by power. And look there in verse 24, the last part, who he's going to destroy. Also the holy people. That's talking about Judah, Jerusalem. This 1 king, he's going to come in, and he's going to do some damage to Judah, the Jewish individuals, people, Jerusalem itself. So Daniel is predicting these things that are going to happen. Now, one thing that really gets a lot of people bothered about this, at least some, many will say, well, there's no way that Daniel could have written these things before they happen. He's too precise. And chapters 8 through 11 and 12, he goes in a lot of details. We're just hitting the high parts. So some will say, well, this was written after all these things happened. But we know that's not the case, because God uses Daniel as a prophet, and the sign of a prophet. Does it come true once he says what he says? And certainly it did. So here in chapter 8, 23 and 24, this king of one of these 4 kingdoms is going to be pretty bad. And he's going to do a lot of damage when it comes to the Jews. I'm not sure which it was, but I know who it is, who the king is. He's coming up. Now we go to chapter 11, verse 29. And at the appointed time he shall return and go toward the south. But it shall not be like the former or the latter. Now this king, they attacked Jerusalem from time to time. But this time when he goes, it's not going to be like these other times. Verse 30 is important to remember. For ships from Cyprus shall come against him, therefore he shall be grieved. This king, Cyprus, another nation, is going to attack him, and they're going to hurt him. Got to remember that. They're going to hurt him. They don't kill him, but they hurt him. So for ships from Cyprus shall come against him, therefore he shall be grieved and return and rage against the holy covenant and do damage. So he shall return and show regard for those who forsake the holy covenant. So once he gets over this wound, he is going to go south of Jerusalem. And he's going to do damage, as it says. And those, there are going to be some that are going to forsake the Jewish religion, you might say, and go to his side. Well, that'll be fine with him. But for the true Jewish people, it's going to be tough. Verse 31. And forces shall be mustered by him, and they shall defile the sanctuary fortress. Then they shall take away the daily sacrifices and place there the abomination of desolation. Those who do wickedly against the covenant shall be corrupt with flattery. But the people who know their God shall be strong and carry out great exploits. And those of the people who understand shall instruct many. Yet for the day shall fall by the sword and flame, by captivity and plundering. So when this king goes in Jerusalem, he's going there to destroy their worship. And he goes right to the temple. History tells us this. Josephus tells us this. The book of Maccabees, they speak of this. But when he goes in, he's going to take away the daily sacrifices, place there an abomination of desolation. When he did go in, he set up an altar of Zeus in the temple, this king. And then he brought in pigs and swine and began to kill them in the temple, slaughter them, and began to cook them on the altar that was in the temple. Totally defiled the whole thing. He did a lot of damage when he went in there, because there's a reason why he hated the Jews there. And here's that king who did it, Antiochus IV Epiphanes. His name is Antiochus IV. Epiphanes means that it means a manifestation of God. This man, this king, who came out of one of the four that rose above all of them, he thought he was God. And that's why one reason he went to Jerusalem, because they weren't going to worship him. So he said, I'll show you about worship. And he destroys their means of worship. But he becomes king in 175 BC. He invades Jerusalem in 168 BC. He outlawed Jewish worship. He banned circumcision. That's where he put the altar to Zeus in the temple, slain pigs in the temple, and sacrificed them on the altar. Pretty bad guy to come in and do that. But he looked upon himself as being a god. Now, the reason he attacked, remember, he was injured. Remember, Cyprus came in and hurt him, and he was grieved. Well, rumor got out that he was dead. And in Jerusalem, they started throwing a party. All right, this old king's dead. We don't have to worry about him. And man, we're just having, like a New Year's Day celebration. Well, he got word of it. And he said, I'll show you I'm not dead. I'm a god. And you can't kill me. So he goes in He attacks for 3 days, brutal attacking. He kills 40,000 Jews in 3 days. He takes another 40,000 captive and sells them into slavery, and he just plunders the city, just destroys it for 3 days. And in doing this, 3 days, but he continued to rule the city. It was a while before things began to change. But 3 days there, he just destroyed them. That's what he wanted to do. Well, the people of Jerusalem, they had the leaders, and they said, we're not going to take this. And they began to organize. We're going to fight against this. We're going to overthrow him. And in 164 BC, the city is liberated by a man by the name of Judah Maccabee. He had 4 brothers. And on the 25th day of Kislev, 164 BC, that's the Jewish calendar, or December 18th, the battle ends. That's when the battle ended. And that's when the day they started, when the battle ended, they started cleaning out the temple. So this guy, he was a pretty good leader. He whipped them, got them out. So they go into the temple. It's dark. And you couldn't just bring a light into a temple. You had to use the candelabra and other kind of lighting that they had in the temple. You had to use that, and you had to be pure oil. You couldn't just go out here and get some oil and pour in and light your flame up. It had to be pure, squeezed from pure olives. Well, they couldn't do it because there are all the shambles here. But they find in the temple 1 canister of oil that had not been tampered with. Pure olive oil, blessed by the priest. I said, well, at least it's enough to do for 1 day, 1 night. So they get the oil divided, they light up the temple, and they're now working and working. And the oil, I guess, runs out. And they say, well, we'll just see what happens tomorrow. They come back the second day, and that canister is full of oil again. And they say, God did that. God filled that canister during the night so that we could work and cleanse this temple. And the same thing happened the 3rd night, the 4th night, the 5th night, the 6th night, the 7th night. They would come back and there'd be plenty of oil there to light up the temple, to clean it up. And they cleaned it up in 8 days. They got it ready. They rebuilt the altar. They got all the pig remains out. They sanctified it, purified it, whatever they did to it. It took them 8 days, and that's why you have the 8 candles. They are celebrating. Hanukkah is a celebration of bringing back the worship to the temple in 164 BC. That's what Hanukkah is about. Let's remember this. Let's celebrate this. Let's have prayers, and let's just tell our children about it. And they do. And it's a big thing. And it's not anything that God commanded them to do, but it's something that they wanted to do. And since 164 BC, they've been doing it. They've been celebrating all those years and still celebrate it today. And there's little different traditions to it, but that's pretty much what it's all about, why they do this. Now, what did Jesus think about Hanukkah? What do you think about it? It was going on while he was alive. And we find him taking part in it. In John 10, 22 and 23, now it was the Feast of Dedication. There's that other name for it. Hanukkah, or dedication of lights, or lighting of the lights, something like that. But now it was the Feast of Dedication in Jerusalem. It was winter. And Jesus walked in the temple in Solomon's porch. So here they are. They're celebrating. All these Jews are in the temple, and they got praying, and eating the food, maybe on the porch, not in the temple, but they're around the temple. And they're just having a good celebration, talking about this, and they brought up that old evil emperor, Antiochus Epiphanes. I said, yeah, we showed him, didn't we? He thought he was a god. He thought he was a god, but yeah, we showed him he was no manifestation of the true God, or the Son of God. He wasn't that. But, that had to be talked about because they retell that story over and over. Well, they're telling that story about Epiphanes being a god, the manifestation of God. And about that time, as we see in verse 22 and 23, the real manifestation of God walks in. The real one. And in verse 24 and 25, then the Jews surrounded him and said to him, how long do you keep us in doubt? If you are the Christ, tell us plainly. Jesus answered them, I told you, and you do not believe. The works that I do in my Father's name, they bear me witness. So they recognize him. They know he has made the claim, at least looking like he's the Son of God. He's the manifestation of God. They're talking about this Epiphanes feller and how he was a fraud, and now they want to come to Jesus. How long are you going to keep a secret? Tell us. Are you the man? Are you the Son of God? Are you the Epiphanes, the manifestation of God? And Christ answers in verse 30. I and my Father are one. Then the Jews took up stones again to stone him. And Jesus answered them, many good works I have shown you from my Father. For which of those works do you stone me? The Jews answered him, saying, for a good work we do not stone you, but for blasphemy, and because you, being a man, make yourself God. Well, they knew he did good works. And they weren't stoning him for the good works. They were stoning him because he claimed to be God. Well, he was. They didn't understand that. So they want to kill him right here. And Jesus began speaking with them, reasoning with him. And he goes on in verse 34. Jesus answered them, is it not written in your law, I said you are gods? If you call them gods to whom the word of God came, and the scriptures cannot be broken, do you say of him whom the Father sanctified and sent into the world, you are blaspheming because I said I am the Son of God? The Jews, or the prophets, were recognized many times as gods, little g. Don't think some kind of heavenly being, somebody with supernatural powers, just prophets that delivered the message of God. And the prophets of the Old Testament, and Christ is saying that. You recognize them as gods, don't you? Little g. Well, they have to agree with that. Yeah, we do. He said, here I am. I'm doing these great works, teaching these things of God, and you're wanting to stone me. I'm making a claim I'm the Son of God. Look at my works. They show who I am. So he has beat them at their own reasoning. And then in verse 37 and 39, if I do not do the works of my Father, do not believe me. But if I do, though you do not believe me, believe the works, that you may know and believe that the Father is in me and I in him. Therefore they sought again to seize him, but he escaped out of their hand. If you don't want to believe me, you don't have to. But here are my works, and they're proof of who I am. And if you don't want to, you still don't have to. But he said, the Father and I are one. I am the Son of God. I am that manifestation. I am that Epiphanes. I am that. Y'all been probably talking about him for 8 days here, if it's on the 8th day. And here I am, works bearing proof as to who I am, and you still won't believe. Jesus uses this holiday to teach truth. He used the holiday to teach about Him, who He was, what He was all about. And I'm wondering if whenever Christ said, 3 times He said in the Gospels, I am the light of the world. I don't know, was He maybe making reference to these candles that were burning, the holiday, Hanukkah, that they were celebrating? I don't know if He was or not. But He's definitely the light of the world. But He says, I'm here to light up the world. I'm here to cleanse. I'm here to make one pure. I'm here to about rededication. That's what all Hanukkah was about. Talking about how the temple was cleansed and brought back to its original way of worship. And Christ says, I'm all that and more. I'm all that. So Christ attended a Hanukkah celebration. He was Jewish. Why wouldn't he? He attended, but he used that time to teach who the true Son of God was, standing right there before him. So now you know the story of Hanukkah. Glenn. Antiochus? Him? No, they ran him out. I don't know how he died. I didn't go that far, but they got him out of Jerusalem. Could be. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's not going to disrupt our worship anymore. Let's get him out. Go kill him. But anyway, I thought that was first time I knew. I've heard of Hanukkah, a little bit of this and that, but go into the details. It's really a fascinating story. Most fascinating, what Daniel said about it, how this was going to happen, and it happened. It happened to a T what he said. And that's why many doubt Daniel's writing before this. They say it came after. No way somebody could be that precise in things that have taken place, but he was precise. Any other comments on Hanukkah? Okay. Maybe that's what they sing, chapter 30 of Psalms. Okay. All right. Thanks for your attention tonight, and we'll take up another topic next week.